Today we are going to discuss about applications of 555 timer IC when it is operated in its monostable mode. There are three main important applications. First one is it can be used as a RAM generator. Then second one is it can be used as a frequency divider. And the third one is it can be used as a pulse width modulator. Let's now consider these applications in detail. First, consider the application as a RAM generator. A linear RAM signal can be generated by using this circuit arrangement. In this circuit arrangement, this 555 timer IC is wired as a monostable multivibrator. When we compare this circuit with our normal monostable multivibrator circuit that we studied in our previous class, that R resistance in that normal monostable multivibrator circuit is replaced here by using this ReQL R1 R2 combination. And here this ReQL R1 R2 combination forms a constant current source. And then the timing capacitor C is charged by using this constant current source instead of charging by a resistor. Okay, that means in the case of normal monostable multivibrator circuit, here we have that R resistance and this capacitor C is charging through that R resistance. But here that R resistance is replaced by using this constant current source. Okay, and by using this constant current source, now we are charging this capacitor C. And we know when a capacitor is charged by using a constant current source, the charging will be linear. Okay, that means when we consider the waveform across this capacitor, we will get a linear charging waveform. Okay, the working of this circuit is exactly similar to that of normal monostable multivibrator circuit, but here only the difference is that the capacitor is charged by using a constant current source here. Okay, let's now consider the waveforms of this circuit. So here we can see this is the trigger input waveform and this is the output obtained at pin 3 and this one is the capacitor voltage at pin 6. Then as we know, when a trigger pulse of amplitude less than 1/3 VCC is applied at pin 2, the output of the monostable multivibrator changes from its stable state to quasi-stable state. Okay, and it will remain in that quasi-stable state for a time duration T. And when the output changes to its quasi-stable state, we know the capacitor C starts charging from 0 towards VCC. And here we are charging that capacitor by using a constant current source. Okay, and when we charge the capacitor by using a constant current source, that charging will be linear. Okay, so here that charging is not exponential, it is linear. Okay, and when the voltage across the capacitor reaches that 2/3 VCC voltage, or when that voltage is slightly greater than that 2/3 VCC voltage, then the monostable multivibrator changes back to its stable state. Okay, and its output changes from that high state to low state, and also the capacitor discharges from that 2/3 VCC point to ground potential. Okay, so here we will get a ramp waveform for this duration of T. Okay, because here charging is not exponential but the charging is linear because we are charging this capacitor by using a constant current source. Okay, then when the next trigger pulse appears at the pin number 2, the output of the monostable multivibrator again switches to its quasi-stable state and the capacitor again starts charging towards that VCC point, and that will continue. So when we apply a trigger pulse of amplitude less than 1/3 VCC to that pin 2, then we will get a linear ramp signal for a duration of T. Let's now derive an equation for the time period T, and also let's check whether that current used to charge the capacitor is constant or not. Let I is the constant current supplied by the constant current source to charge this capacitor C. Then the voltage across this capacitor C can be given by Vc is equal to 1/C integral 0 to t I dt. Okay, and this I is the current supplied by the constant current source. And in this circuit diagram we can see that current I is the collector current of this transistor QL. Okay, now we are going to calculate the equation for this I. For that we need to write the KVL equation for this portion. When we consider this portion, here we can see the voltage across this resistance R1 is equal to the voltage across this resistance RE plus the emitter base voltage of this transistor QL. Okay, because this R1 is parallel to this RE and emitter base combination. Okay, then what is the voltage across this resistance R1? We can calculate the voltage across this resistance R1 by using the voltage division rule. So consider this R1 R2 combination. Then by using the voltage division rule, the voltage across this resistance R1 is VCC into R1 divided by R1 plus R2. Okay, then what is the voltage across this resistance RE? When we consider the voltage across this resistance RE, that is equal to the current flowing through RE into RE. Okay, then what is the current flowing through this resistance RE? Here we can see this resistance RE is connected to the emitter of this transistor QL. Okay, so the current flowing through RE is the emitter current of this transistor QL. Okay, and the emitter current can be written as beta plus 1 into IB. Okay, and IB is the base current of this transistor QL. Okay, so let's now consider that equation. So by using that KVL, we can write the voltage across that R1 is equal to the emitter base voltage of transistor QL plus voltage across that resistance RE. Okay, so voltage across that resistance R1 is VCC into R1 divided by R1 plus R2, and the voltage across that emitter base junction is marked as VEB, then plus the voltage across that resistance RE is given by beta plus 1 into IB into RE. Okay, then we can rewrite this equation as VCC into R1 divided by R1 plus R2 minus VEB is equal to beta plus 1 into IBRE, and we can approximate that beta plus 1 as beta. Okay, because beta is very large value, hence we can approximate that beta plus 1 as beta. Okay, so that is equal to beta IBRE, and we know beta IB is IC, the collector current of transistor. Okay, so we can write this one as IC into RE. Okay, and we have already stated that IC current, the collector current, is the constant current supplied by that constant current source to charge the capacitor. Okay, so we are denoting that IC by using I. Okay, so we will get VCC into R1 divided by R1 plus R2 minus VEB is equal to I into RE. Now from this equation we can calculate the equation for I. Okay, so first we need to calculate the LCM here. When we take the LCM, we will get VCC into R1 minus VEB into R1 plus R2 all divided by R1 plus R2. Then we need to take this RE to that side. Okay, then we will get the equation for I as VCC into R1 minus VEB into R1 plus R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into RE. Okay, now consider this equation. Here we can see this R1 is constant, R2 is constant, VCC is constant, VEB is constant, and RE is also a constant. Okay, so this current I is a constant current, and hence the capacitor C is charging by using the constant current, and hence the charging will be linear. Okay, now we are going to substitute this equation in this VC equation. Okay, and we will calculate the equation for time period T. So when we substitute this in this equation 1, it will be VC is equal to 1 by C into integral 0 to T. Then for I we will substitute this one. So here we will get this R1 VCC minus VEB into R1 plus R2 divided by RE into R1 plus R2 dt. Okay, then this one is a constant value, so we can take this outside. So we can write VC is equal to R1 VCC minus VEB into R1 plus R2 divided by the C into RE into R1 plus R2 into integral of 0 to T dt. Okay, and what is that integral 0 to T dt? Integral dt is T, and to that we need to apply the limit 0 to T. Okay, and when we apply that limit we will get T minus 0, and that is T. Okay, hence we will get VC is equal to R1 VCC minus VEB into R1 plus R2 divided by CRE into R1 plus R2 into T. Okay, now at the instant of time T equal to capital T, the voltage across the capacitor becomes 2 by 3 VCC. Hence we are going to substitute these values in this equation. Okay, so at time T, this VC value is 2 by 3 VCC. Hence we will get 2 by 3 VCC is equal to R1 VCC minus VEB into R1 plus R2 divided by CRE into R1 plus R2 into capital T. Okay, then from this equation we can write the equation for this time period T. Okay, so we will get T is equal to this 2 by 3 VCC into CRE into R1 plus R2 divided by R1 VCC minus VEB into R1 plus R2. Okay, so this is the equation for the time period for that linear ramp signal. Now let's consider the application as a frequency divider. The monostable multivibrator, when continuously triggered by a square wave signal, can be used as a frequency divider if the timing interval T of the monostable multivibrator is designed to be longer than the period of the triggering square wave signal. That means to obtain a frequency divided version of the output, we need to apply the input as the trigger input. Okay, that means we need to apply the input to the pin number 2, and also the timing interval T of the monostable multivibrator should be designed to be longer than the period of the triggering signal. Let's consider this example. Here we can see this is our input signal, and this input signal is applied as the trigger input to pin number 2, and we know the triggering will occur when a negative going pulse of amplitude less than 1 by 3 VCC appears at the second pin. Okay, so here consider when this first negative edge comes, that monostable multivibrator triggers and the output changes from its stable state to quasi-stable state, and it will remain in that quasi-stable state for this time duration T, and this T is designed in such a way that the second negative edge comes within that T duration, and we have already studied that when a trigger signal comes within that T duration, no change will occur. Okay, then after that T duration it returns back to its stable state, and here we can see when the third negative edge comes, this monostable multivibrator again triggers and its output changes from its stable state to quasi-stable state. Okay, and when the fourth clock pulse comes, that will be within that T duration and no change will occur, and this monostable multivibrator output will trigger again when the fifth clock pulse comes. Okay, and that will continue. So when we consider these waveforms, here we can see the output of the monostable multivibrator triggers for the negative edges that comes at first, third, fifth, like that. Okay, and here we can see the frequency of this output waveform is the divided by 2 version of this input. Okay, because when we compare these two waveforms, the one full cycle of the output waveform is from here to here. Okay, and when we compare the input waveform to this one, within this one cycle of the output waveform, here we have two cycles of inputs. Okay, from here to here we have one cycle, and from here to here we have the second cycle. Okay, so within the one cycle of this output waveform, here we have two cycles of input, and hence the frequency of this output waveform is the divided by 2 version of this one. Okay, then in this manner the output pulse can be made any integral fraction of the input triggering square wave signal by properly designing this T duration. Now consider the application as a pulse width modulator. We know a pulse width modulation is a technique in which the width of the carrier pulse changes according to the instantaneous amplitude of the modulating input signal. Now here, to use the monostable multivibrator circuit as a pulse width modulator, we need to use that fifth pin of the 555 timer IC. Here that fifth pin is not connected to ground through 0.01 microfarad capacitor, and we need to connect the modulating input signal to that fifth pin. We know this fifth pin is directly connected to the inverting terminal of the upper comparator. Then we also know a 2/3 VCC voltage is also present in that inverting terminal of the upper comparator, and that is provided by using that 3 5 kilo ohm resistive combination. Okay, and when we apply a modulating input signal to that fifth pin, now the modulating signal is superimposed upon the voltage 2/3 VCC obtained through that voltage divider circuit, and the threshold level of the upper comparator thus changes and the output pulse modulation occurs. Okay, that means when we apply a modulating signal to this fifth pin, the effective threshold voltage at the inverting terminal of the upper comparator is now the resultant of this modulating input voltage plus that 2/3 VCC voltage. Okay, and when this modulating input voltage is increasing, that threshold voltage also increases. Okay, and if the modulating input voltage is decreasing, that threshold voltage also decreases. And we know the output of this monostable multivibrator remains in its quasi-stable state for a time duration taken by the capacitor to charge from 0 to that threshold voltage. Okay, that threshold voltage was 2/3 VCC, but here that threshold voltage is changing depending upon the modulating input voltage. Okay, so when this modulating input voltage is increasing, that threshold voltage also increases, and hence the time taken by the capacitor to charge from 0 to that threshold voltage also increases, and hence the width of the output will increase. And when the modulating input voltage is negative, or when it is decreasing below that 0 point, then the threshold voltage of the upper comparator also decreases, and hence it will be less than that 2/3 VCC voltage. Hence the time taken by the capacitor to charge from 0 to that threshold voltage will be less. Okay, and hence the width of the output will decrease. Okay, so consider this example. This is our modulating input signal, and we are applying that modulating input signal to pin number 5. Okay, and depending upon the instantaneous amplitude of this modulating input signal, the effective threshold voltage at the inverting terminal of the upper comparator will change. Okay, here we can see the modulating input signal amplitude is increasing, and hence the threshold voltage will also increase from 2/3 VCC value. Okay, for example, consider this point. Let the amplitude of this modulating input voltage is 1 at this point. Okay, now at this point the effective threshold voltage at the inverting terminal of the upper comparator is 2/3 VCC plus 1 volt. Okay, so the time taken by the capacitor to charge from 0 to that threshold voltage will increase, and hence the width of the output pulse also will increase. Okay, then the maximum value of the threshold voltage will occur at this point. Okay, because the modulating input signal has its maximum voltage at this point, and hence at this point the threshold voltage will be maximum, and hence the width of the pulse will be maximum at this point. Okay, so when the modulating input signal is changing from this point to this point, the width of the output pulse goes on increasing, and at this point we will get the maximum width. Okay, and after this point we can see the amplitude of the modulating signal is decreasing, hence the width of the pulse goes on decreasing, and we will get the minimum width at this point. Okay, because at this point this modulating input signal has its lowest negative value. Okay, for example, consider the value at this point is -3. Okay, now when we consider this point, the threshold voltage at the inverting terminal will be 2/3 VCC minus 3. Okay, and hence that threshold voltage is at its minimum value, and hence the time taken by the capacitor to charge from 0 to that threshold voltage is less. Okay, and hence the width of the output will be less. Okay, hence we will get the minimum width at this point, and after this point we can see the amplitude is increasing, and hence the width of the output pulse goes on increasing, and when the next positive peak point comes, the amplitude will be at its maximum point, and that process will continue. Okay, and hence we can see the width of the output pulse is changing according to the instantaneous amplitude of the modulating input signal. Hence when the amplitude of the input signal is increasing, the width of the output signal also increases, and we will get the maximum width at the positive peak point of the modulating input signal. And when the modulating input signal is decreasing, the width of the output signal also decreases, and we will get the minimum width at this negative peak of the modulating input signal. Okay, then it can be seen that here the frequency of the output remains the same, with the duty cycle of the output varying in response to the modulating input.